the whole city council on October 26th and ask for a roll. Where is our city clerk? I'll wait for Jenny. Sorry. I thought so.
It's going to be a tough one.
All right, I will proceed convening the committee of the whole October 26th. We've reached the 5 o'clock hour. I'll ask for a roll call as the clerk is seated.
Jacobson, Fanouken,
Here.
Marquardt,
Here.
Snow,
Here.
Noriko,
Here.
Baker,
Here.
Ray,
Present?
6 present.
Thank you. Okay, on our docket for Committee of the Whole this evening is the Glidden Crossing Annexation Agreement, Third Amendment. And this is for discussion purposes this evening. Anne Maria would be well to outline what staff expectation is coming out of that discussion this evening.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Principal Planner, first of all, Derek Hyland is going to give an overview and talk about the request before you tonight, as well as give you background as to what were the first and second amendments to the agreement. Our goal tonight is to find out from the council as to whether you want to proceed forward on a formal amendment to the annexation agreement, and if so, what process would you want to follow? With an annexation agreement amendment, that would require a public hearing before the council, so there would be an opportunity for public to comment on it and make sure that that is satisfactory enough for the council. But the long story short, well, Principal Planner Hyland's going to summarize why we're here before you tonight, but we want to get direction whether to proceed forward or not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
I guess with any project, it starts with some history. So City Manager Gora highlighted that I would provide some. Doing some research, this particular development was brought into the city in 1995 with an annexation agreement. In 1995, the area that is described today as the Glidden Crossing development was phase 2 of the Overlook Point subdivision that exists and wraps around the commercial development. That existed for approximately 9 years when developers identified that corner to become commercial with a grocer. Based upon what I found in July of 2006, the Glidden Crossing development was approved. That was the first amendment to the annexation agreement from 1995. So in July of 2006, the Glidden Crossing development became as what you see today, with the outlots still scheduled to occur at some point in time with approval of the final plans, the 2 main buildings that has the Schnucks development, and then the other one that has the Goodwill and the DaVita dialysis, and the other building that is further south. Speaking of Goodwill, that was the second amendment. So in May of 2009, Goodwill approached the city of DeKalb, and one of those 23 or so listed prohibited uses had within it resale or antique shops or the like. We brought the amendment before the city council, had a public hearing, asked the council and the public via a public hearing, do we accept eliminating resale shops from the prohibited use list in 2009 to allow for the Goodwill Industries store to locate at the South Annie Glidden Road development there. That brings us back to 2013. 2013 is when the council at that time first heard of the third amendment proposed to the annexation agreement. This is for the Penny's Place parlor. Much like the Goodwill, bars and taverns in that annexation agreement are listed as prohibited uses. In 2013, Blackhawk Restaurant Group was the intended proprietor of said Penny's Place. They have an establishment that's been in operation for 2 years in the Sycamore development right next to the Hy-Vee. And Mike Thiessen is here tonight to once again reacclimate the council and those watching at home and in the audience about his concept and their business model. If you're interested for his PowerPoint, I believe he has one.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's high tech. Thank you. I think the last time I was here was a Monday night. The Bears were on, and the Huskies were about ready to go to the Orange Bowl. So it's good to be back under better weather conditions, and at least we're not missing the Bears game tonight, or we'll be delayed. So, as Derek had mentioned, we had come, I think, back before in December 13 with the landowner. At that time was Phillips Edison. They are no longer the landlord here. I believe now that it's Slade Properties out of Canada. A couple of things have changed, not so much the concept or the company, but we've been asked by Schnucks to actually leave the location where we were between the dialysis location and the Goodwill and to move actually closer to them. So right now, the proposed location would be between the nail salon and the hair cuttery. And a good reason for that was that we share a very similar customer base. We tend to appeal to women and to shoppers, and they were very comfortable having us in close proximity to them. The second thing is we've got several locations that we are with Schnucks now, and I think that they would tell you that we're probably a model tenant. So we're near them in Savoy, and we're near them in Normal, Illinois. We're actually right next to them. We are the building or the door that's adjacent to their store, and we're also near them, actually adjacent to them also in Urbana. So I think Schnucks can speak well to us as a tenant, as our business model, and also as a rent payer. So let me just jump into this presentation here real quick. This is very similar to what I think we went over in 2013, but I know we have a couple new council members, so if there's any questions along the way, please feel free to ask. Right now, we've got businesses in 6 states: Illinois, Idaho, Texas, California, Washington. We have 57 operating units similar to this within the state of Illinois today. We are the single largest tax generator in this space throughout the state. You have a very, very good competitor of ours that's adjacent or near the target. And I think with the limited time that they've been open, you've probably had very few complaints. They're a good competitor. This is now a proven business model in the state. Obviously, we believe we're the best. And I'd probably have that argument with anybody. I hope it wouldn't come to blows, but I feel like we'd hold our own one way or the other. And then we're obviously very landlord. We've got a customer profile that's favorable to most retailers, and then our balance sheet and our income statement is very, very secure and very, very friendly from a landlord perspective, which is why I'd like to have us in there. As I mentioned before, we're near 3 or 4 Schnucks, Hy-Vee and Sycamore, Jewel, Mariano's, Caputo's, Tony's Fine Foods, and Pete's, which are more Chicago-based retailers. And then we're obviously have deals with both real estate investment trusts, corporate and individual landlords or investors, Inland Real Estate, which is a very well-known real estate trust headquartered out of Oak Brook Terrace, and then Regency as well. I'll give you a couple of the names that we occupy in terms of their institutional real estate that they hold. And then I mentioned this is actually held by Slade Properties out of Canada. So our Andy Glidden Road location, Schnucks approved and encouraged us to change. Right now, this is a vacant space. We're not displacing anybody, which is good for the landlord. It's good for us. We obviously need to change the annex agreement. I think it provides for additional flexibility and tax generation, not only for us, but potential development in the front, which may or not include outlot development or any other things that may come into this mall in the future. And as I mentioned before, we feel this is a proven concept with very successful locations, or at least statewide. We are a casual upscale eatery. Each of our stores has a different food profile. We offer an eclectic menu with beer and wine only, and then entertainment. We are completely age controlled, so we only allow 21 and older in our locations, whether we qualify as a bar or tavern that we would in DeKalb, whether we qualify as a full restaurant, which we do in Elk Grove Village and other markets, but we do an age controlled for 2 things: the safety of our employees, because there's liquor involved, and because we do have gaming, which is the state is mandated to be 21 and older. So we maintain an age-controlled environment no matter what the location or what the local rules are, if you will allow us, but we try to be age-controlled. We have a customized design build-out. Our typical build-out is between $125,000 to $200,000 per location. The gaming area is discreet. The custom carpet, The artwork is a Chicago motif, so you see issues like the Wrigley Building, things along the Chicago River. And we have a combination of seating, so we have a casual soft seating, which is a combination of leather chairs and a sofa, as well as 4 top tables and tall tables or tall boys as well. And then every unit has state-of-the-art video surveillance. In some cases, depending on what the local codes are, that ties directly back into the police department if that's a requirement. If not, it's usually between 8 and 10 cameras, depending on the size of the location that we go into. Here's the design here. This is from our Morton Grove location. Similar picture with the people that we're actually playing in. But as you can see, there's the combination of the leather seats and the hard chairs on the bottom lower, and then the artwork on the left. And anything related to gaming sits behind that wall for 2 reasons. We don't want it to be visible from the window, which is, again, a protective measure to anybody who may not walk by that would be a minor or would not be welcome in our location because of laws or our own corporate rules. These are the most recent tax numbers that came from the Illinois Gaming Board in Sycamore in September 2015. These are all from last month. We generated $3,482 in taxes, and last year, give or take, we should be around $37,000. Now, these give or take because of the variability every month, so please don't just take the last month and times it by 12. Weather makes a difference. Everything makes a difference in retail. Antioch, we were actually between a Sam's or a Walmart and a Menards in an outlot there. In Woodstock, we are near a Jewel and a Panera. Then in South Elgin, we are very near actually a Goodwill and a Mobile right there in South Elgin. So just give you a little bit of mix about who some of our neighbors are throughout the state. These are some of our corporate policies. We have food available for every minute that we're open. We are Safe Serve, Illinois Safe Serve from a public health perspective. We have a sanitation manager certificate on president who has been trained. We have our own in-house corporate Illinois Department of Health food safety officer. All employees, even at the corporate level, are BASSET certified. And with the new state law that came into effect on July 1st, every employee from the CFO to myself to the other partners are BASSET certified. We have a 3-drink maximum. So we monitor your drinks as we put it in the POS system, how many drinks you've had. When you're at 3, we stop. So, typical menu: gourmet food, coffee, soft drinks, juices, light eclectic fare. These are a few items on our menu: the Italian Supreme Panini, chicken pesto sandwich, turkey artichoke wrap, tomato caprese sandwich, which is our vegetarian option. We have a salted caramel brownie with the pretzel crust, which is my personal favorite. And then obviously beer and wine. Some places we have soup, some places we have salad, depending on what the local codes are, but this is a rough idea of what our menu would look like. A couple of pictures. Had to throw these in because they look pretty good. And then finally, I think why I'd like to see if you would help us push this through. Financially strong, we have excellent customer service. Our liquor service is, I think, top-notch. We've been open now for over 2 years, and you know, we've failed one sting. We failed one sting in South Elgin, and I'm very comfortable mentioning that that's something that we are not proud of. I had to go myself in front of the Liquor Commission and take the public spanking that we deserve for failing that. But we've probably passed 24 stings from the state level, which I can bring the letters to show you, plus the normal local ones as well. So we are very proud of the number of locations we have, the number of days we opened, and the number of things that we've passed. And that's first and foremost one of the things we're most proud of. Obviously, we mentioned the safety and security with the video camera within each location, then obviously the positive tax generation that we have. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions you might have about our company and this location and how we would interact with the city.
Mike, I'd be curious, has there been any change in the business model since opening and operating Penny's Place next to Hy-B?
In terms of what, Mayor? I mean, every store takes a little bit of a different profile based on the customers. So we have some stores that do more than a third of our revenue in food, which we usually pro forma out. And we have some stores that do very little food and beverage. So we've been happy with the Sycamore location in terms of what it's done business-wise. I mean, it's probably one of our top 15 stores within our whole corporate structure.
Well, the intent of my question is, from what you originally intended at the Sycamore location in terms of operating? Has there been any change in that model?
No, there's been
From
no
what you
change. The
intended.
design is the same, the business model's the same. That store would be what your store would look like, 100%.
Thank you. Alderman Snow.
I was trying to get better understanding of the restaurant part of the business. Okay, you have tables, are there waitresses and cooks, or are they people go
No,
up to
we
a counter
don't, we
and
don't have
order?
cooks. Our food comes in semi-prepared, and then we finish it off in the store. So it's got a shelf life of between 3 and 5 days, depending on the item.
Okay.
But the number of stores that we have a central commissary that we ship everything out from our stores for, and then we finish it off. So it's in a combination convection oven, microwave oven. But some of the items, just based on their shelf life, have to be turned within 3 or 5 days. And so, no, they are served the food directly. It's not a bar. There are no bar chairs or a traditional bar as you may know it. But the food is served to you by our server there in the store.
That sort of brings on, I can't remember in our original proposal what restrictions there are to prevent this from becoming a regular bar. Were there restrictions in the agreement to say this has to follow a certain model? Maybe Dean can answer that.
It ultimately didn't proceed that far. We certainly could look at whatever restrictions the council would seek to incorporate. The hours of operation for Blackhawk's other establishments are narrower than our hours of operation for bars typically. So if there are conditions the council would be interested in incorporating, we could certainly work with the applicant and see if those would make sense.
Well, my concern, I mean, businesses evolve over time, and I guess my biggest concern will be what the residents want, and I think that was my concern last time. This was built as a neighborhood shopping center, and so I really want to know what the neighborhood thinks. Personally, I think it's not a bad place, but if this is the neighbor's perception that I need to get a handle on. So, thank you.
I think a lot of the concerns that came up, and I obviously can't speak for the neighbors. I know we had sent out a number of the certified letters, and we had a hearing before, was related to music and maybe noise, and I think possibility of some congregation in the back of our location. And obviously, I'm hoping that the operational history that we have, that if, whether it be Dean or the police chief or the city manager were to check the other municipalities where we have, I think that you'll find that there'll be no complaints related to any of that. Music-wise, all of our music is pumped in. It's a satellite station that we program, so it's typically Neil Diamond, some Simon and Garfunkel. There's a little bit of more modern type poppy music. You would have some like Taylor Swift, and I think I had left the store today and there was a little bit of One Direction playing, and I know that well because I have a teenage daughter, so I've heard that album a million times. But that's the typical music that's in there. And then obviously we have a no smoking policy based on the state. And anybody that would smoke, if they do need to, they leave out the front. They don't leave out the back to have a cigarette in the parking lot.
Alderman Baker.
Well, I was in favor of it before, but as I recall, that was the argument of the neighbors, is they thought the smokers would go out the back. And that was the whole debate. But if you're now saying they have to go out the front, then that would completely neuter the argument of the noise.
Well, Alderman, a lot of why we want them to go in the front is just from a safety perspective, so we can keep track of our customers. The back is an outlet for fire and safe and service. The front is for the in and out of our customers and our employees. So part of the reason we would want them to be going out the front is so we keep track of our customers.
And Alderman Snow, when he asked the question, I thought he was going to ask, or was trying to ask what I'm thinking. I remember when we brought Glidden Crossing in some restrictions that they offered up, the original developer, that who knows if they made any difference or not, but there was a list of them. Obviously, we must have made an exception to the restriction of no alcohol, which maybe, and that's the question, is what is the restriction that we're even talking to this about? When we allowed Schnucks to become basically a liquor store within the grocery store, was it just purely no liquor? Was the word no bars? What is the covenanted restriction that we're having to override to allow this type of establishment to come in?
The specific regulation at issue here is language prohibiting bars. The business model that Blackhawk has isn't perhaps what you would customarily consider to be a bar, but the city council has very clearly indicated that you don't wish to have video gaming expand into restaurants or other places that aren't all 21 and older. So our video gaming licenses are restricted to establishments that, relative to what they're proposing to do, would be a bar license, and that is why it'd be a violation of the annexation agreement. So it's a prohibition specifically to bars that is the problem here.
And I do recall now why we brought that in, because at the time, Molly's was looking for a place to move. They ended up moving to the old Amnesia, but it was talk even back then. So that's all we were worried about, was the college bar ending up down there. It was never meant to restrict this type of establishment. So there's the history on it for everybody that's wondering.
Okay. Other discussion, Alderman Noreko.
Perhaps someone either on the council or city staff can clarify what the commitment or the understanding was with the neighbors when this was originally came up for discussion and then was deferred.
I think there were concerns identified about, as Mr. Thiessen had indicated, that patrons would go out the back and would smoke or would loiter in that area. There are residences out the back of this. There's, if I recall correctly, a fence separating the areas, but there's a concern about noise that would emanate from the rear of the establishment if it was a bar-type establishment. There were some concerns raised about the nature of the patrons that would attend the establishment. From the information that we've been able to see at the other establishments that Blackhawk runs, their customer profile is not one that would customarily be viewed as problematic in terms of generating noise or in terms of generating quality of life issues. But the primary concerns were that it would operate, I think as Alderman Snow indicated, that it would function as a bar and would generate quality of life concerns for the neighbors located to the rear of it, out the back door.
Was the understanding that it was, that the discussion several years ago was the end of the discussion on the issue, or was it kind of left vague that it might come up again, or?
If this, let me answer a question after that. If this comes up again, we would go through the whole process of sending out mailing notices to affected property owners within a certain range of the property and holding public hearings and soliciting that public feedback. I don't recall how the motion was left on this. If I recall correctly, it was just that there were some aldermen that had expressed concern about approving this given the public comments that had been received. And therefore, it did not go forward. It was not approved.
Okay.
But it was also not denied, Dean. I believe it was just tabled. There was no action positively or negatively
Right,
taken.
yeah, there was not a thumbs down vote either.
I think at that point, Mike, I thought you withdrew.
Well,
Given-
I don't think we were the one, I don't think we could withdraw, Mayor, because I think it was the annexation agreement. I mean, we're obviously here just as we have to get the annexation agreement passed through, and then we would come back around for our liquor license, so.
Okay.
I had just mentioned the guys from Canada that I would come back before the board because I'd been here before versus trying to introduce a new player from the landlord, so, yeah. If we withdrew or table, our issue was, I think that now that we have an operating history and we can assuage some of the concerns is why we'd like to try to come back to DeKalb. I mean, the precedent obviously in DeKalb is, you've passed a similar, if not exact, business model that we have, and I don't think there's been issues. I hope there's not been issues, both from an industry perspective, but obviously from a selfish corporate perspective with Stella's, and we would be the same type model that the council had approved previously.
I see. Alderman Baker.
I think what the council people should do is what was recommended at the time, that it took the pause or indefinite pause, and that is make it up to your establishment in next to the Hy-Vee and check it out. I never went, but I never had a problem with the idea because I was part of that original annexation. I was part of getting it passed And I absolutely guarantee that Molly's would have ended up down there had we not put that restriction against bars, and that's what we had in mind, not something like your establishment.
I think we've got probably a conflict in terminology. 'Cause I don't think anybody that would come into our place would call it a bar. If you said, would you name this, I don't think they would say, that's a bar, that's a tavern. But obviously with the rules that are in place here, that's the rules that we have to follow, which is why we would be seeking this change.
Okay. Other discussion or questions from council? Alderman Baker.
The biggest stumbling point, and I even agreed, was that, and which was the problem I had with it, was the smoking out the back and all the noise that for sure couldn't have been controlled. And there was never any, at that point that I recall, any thought that there was a way to guarantee they only went out the front. But if you're going to bring this forward with the guarantee that the public would not have access to the rear to go out and come back in, then that's a game changer.
Well, Alderman, that's our service interest. I mean, that's not the front door of our house. That's our service interest. That's our garage. I mean, that's where we bring our deliveries in. If you look at the way that the mall's set up, that's where the deliveries are made to Schnucks. That's where the trucks come in. That's where the garbage picks up. I mean, that is not a public entrance or exit in our mind. That's a safety code entrance or exit less the service. We want everybody to come in the front of our business. So, yes, we would not put a smoking, whatever those round cistern type things are, that would not be in the back for our employees or our customers to go out there and smoke.
Well, if that is a guarantee, because I'm thinking that we did compare it to Chipotle, where they have liquor, and the Potbelly, although I had lunch there today, I don't recall if there's bottles of beer in their cooler or not, but particularly the Potbelly, right there on West Lincoln, they do encourage people to come in the back door. But if you're saying that it's going to be like, say for instance, a locked entrance as far as not being able to get in from the outside versus you obviously have to have a crash bar and emergency exit, that's a game changer, because I don't recall that being part of the guarantees or discussion, and other than some of the public being just opposed to a bar or liquor period, it was an overwhelming argument that the noise would be not something you could control.
Right, and I would have to defer to the fire chief or the fire inspector. We have usually it's a crash bar, but that door is not open for public entry in the rear, less the safety crash bar. And I don't want to venture into what the code is with our design, but that's not there to be open. We would have to let service people come in the back for delivery.
It sounds like if that's part of your proposal, that would take away at least half of the concerns that I couldn't think a way around it at the time myself. The fire chief's got his hand raised, Mayor.
Chief Hicks.
Mayor, if it would help, we could even put an alarmed exit on that door, like we have in many other places, with a crash bar.
Thank you. So this evening, what we're reaching for is if there's a consensus from council to bring back an annexation agreement, third amendment. Is there, I'm seeing nodding, is there anyone opposed to considering a third amendment for the purposes of this function at Glidden Crossing, video gaming function? Seeing none, I think you've got the message from council.
We do.
We'll look forward to seeing that in the first proceeding through the
Notice process.
hearing process and then coming back to council in due course. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving to public participation, are there those wishing to speak from the public? Yeah. Bessie?
Regarding this particular item, I think the point that is being missed, and I wish them well, it sounds like a great business and all of that, but I think what mayor and council and staff in particular are totally missing is the point of the annexation agreement, the original annexation agreement, where the public came in full force, and Kate, this is your ward, in full force, and begged for an annexation agreement to not allow that type of a facility there because of the way that area, because of the geographics, because of the way it's set up. And then again, it came forward and the public spoke, again. And it's not just a matter of saying whether it's a bar, and, you know, the city attorney is talking about the word bar. It's the whole idea, it's a neighborhood kind of a situation, and you're totally forgetting that the public that entrusts you with making the right decision, you're totally avoiding the original annexation agreement. That was why Glidden Crossing was brought in. Without that part of it, it wouldn't have been brought in. What is the matter with you? Staff, how can you possibly skew the facts in such a manner as to not emphasize the fact that the public did not want it, the people who lived there, the taxpayers, remember them? Dave, you're way off base on this one. You know better. You've been here long enough to know better.
Thank you, Ms.
Sure.
Anyone else wishing to speak to council at this point? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve holding an executive session to discuss personnel as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C1 and pending or imminent litigation as provided for in 5 ILCS 120/2C11. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Noreko. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Markwart. Roll call.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markort,
Yes.
Snow,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
6 yes.
Thank you. Motion carried. We will return toward the 6 o'clock hour to convene the regular meeting. We'll use the large conference room.